LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the January 24th edition of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thanks for joining me for the first Sunday of the Biden presidency. I'll be using the 11 best, most newsworthy clips that I picked out for you from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States, for what should be a really informative media criticism and political commentary show for you all tonight. There's a link down in the video description to my own notes that I use to figure out what's in each clip, and I try to remember to say all the things in the notes that you probably can't even understand half of what it is. But if you want to follow along on the clip list, that link's down there. Also, the source of all the video clips, all the Sunday shows. You should be able to watch them maybe late if you don't have cable or whatever, but there are links down there to all that. My main topic is Will Biden Unify? That includes filibuster reform, the impeachment, the reconciliation bill to pass COVID relief. I'll be talking about all of that. I'll also briefly be talking about vaccine distribution problems again, with a couple clips at the end. And I have a political comedy clip. It's from something kind of funny that happened at Biden's inauguration. You probably saw the Bernie Sanders meme that went so viral of him sitting in the chair with his big mittens. And I'm going to show you a clip now from CNN State of the Union, which used to be CNN State of the Union. Now it's CNN State of the Union with Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, because now they're like official co-hosts in the name of the show. And here's Dana Bash asking Senator Bernie Sanders about the meme that he was part of and how he's used it for good over in this clip.
Things that has seemed to have been a distraction from the pain you're talking about is you on the internet over the past week. The fact that you have become a meme, the picture of you sitting at the inauguration in your mittens. Thousands of memes. That's just some of them on the screen. I have to show you some of my personal favorites. Demi Moore, she put your picture in her famous ghost scene. Jennifer Grey, she played Baby in Dirty Dancing. She put you in the corner, Senator. And, you're even a selfie with us on election night. So my question is, are you having as much fun with this as the world is?
I am. And not only are we having fun, what we're doing here in Vermont is we're going to be selling around the country sweatshirts and T-shirts, and all of the money that's going to be raised, which I expect will be a couple of $1 million, will be going to programs like Meals on Wheels that feed low-income senior citizens. So it turns out actually to be a good thing and not only a fun thing.
Well, and apparently that's sold out. So you've got to start manufacturing more to give to charity like Meals on Wheels in Vermont and elsewhere. Senator, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dana.
So that was Bernie Sanders talking about how he's used the meme to support this charity. And so, as usual, Bernie Sanders has found some way to turn an internet virality into a force for good, which it often isn't. And is that capitalism or using some sort of force of capitalism? I don't know. You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. But I will have a more substantive Bernie Sanders clip if you're following along. That is clip number 8, where on my main topic of Will Biden Unify, because he's got two different sides he's working on. I almost took a clip. Maybe I should have. The NBC News' Meet the Press had this. They have the data download every week where they look at their polling. And they basically split the Democratic Party and the Republican Party in, both of them were like 17%. They both, I guess, have like 34% of the population, although that's not really how it worked out in their ad. But they had like 17% are Trump loyalists, 17% are establishment Republicans, and then on the Democratic side, it's 17% are Biden loyalists, and then 17% are progressives, and then the percentages that are missing, those are the independents, the non-Democrats and Republicans. But what I found really interesting about that is if you get 3 of those 4, 17 plus 17 plus 17, that's 51%. Anyway, I should have taken that data download clip from NBC's Meet the Press, but I do have the full Meet the Press news summary, where Chuck Todd does have a pre-recorded package. He covers basically all the big news of the week. Biden and COVID-19 and impeachment. There's even a little bit of Trump. I said his name. See, I'm not going to go... I can't cover impeachment and the stolen election clip with Rand Paul without talking about Trump a little bit. And by the way, that is the clip of the week is George Stephanopoulos' attempt to cross-examine Senator Rand Paul on whether the election was stolen. That's clip number 7. But anyway, before I get to any of the newsmaker clips, I have news summaries from all 5 of the big corporate outlets, from longest to shortest. I sort of started introducing NBC Meet the Press's news summary. Chuck Todd, you'll see, talks about the new, how they are, NBC News Meet the Press is in a new studio for the new administration, and then goes into his big introduction and pre-recorded package I will discuss with you after we watch it together over here.
Good Sunday morning from our brand new studio where we are broadcasting from after more than 60 years at our historic location in Upper Northwest Washington. A new studio for a new administration. Much as President Trump sought to undo the legacy of his predecessor, Barack Obama, so Joe Biden is moving to escape the shadow of Donald Trump and unwind that presidency. 4 years after President Trump's American carnage speech, Joe Biden stressed a theme of unity in his inaugural address. Then moving on from rhetoric, Mr. Biden went to work immediately to erase much of what he could with a pen of Donald Trump's presidency, issuing 17 executive orders on day 1 on everything from economic relief to climate change to racial justice to immigration to the pandemic and, of course, oh, by the way, an order that stopped construction on the wall. In addition to all of that, the House will transmit its article of impeachment to the Senate tomorrow with a trial in 2 weeks. But it is one issue, the pandemic, that presents the new Biden administration with both its greatest challenge and its greatest opportunity. The president's ambitious multi-tiered national strategy to combat the virus is precisely the kind of muscular response the Trump administration avoided. So will it work? 418,000 Americans are dead from COVID-19, and another 100,000 are likely to die in the next 30 days. It's not hyperbole to say that the Biden presidency hinges on its success against the pandemic. His administration's success in taking on all aspects of this health catastrophe will also go a long way towards not just determining America's trust in this new president, but in proving that government still has the ability to get big things done.
We're in a national emergency. We need to act like we're in a national emergency.
President Biden, whose campaign was defined by a single issue,
COVID-19, 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 COVID-19.
now is faced with the challenge of delivering on his promise to make government effective again.
We will be judged, you and I, by how we resolve these cascading crises of our era. This is the first one I'm signing.
In an NBC News poll, just 11% of voters say vaccine administration has been going very well. Among those who say delivery falls short, 64% blame the federal government.
We spent hours, 2 or 3 hours at a time, often with no luck.
The president is doubling down on his pledge to deliver 100 million vaccinations in his first 100 days.
We need more vaccine, we need more vaccine, we need more vaccines.
And the administration is already struggling on how best to reassure the public.
What we're inheriting is so much worse than we could have imagined.
We certainly are not starting from scratch because there is activity going on in the distribution.
President Biden now faces 2 challenges: making red state Republican governors into partners.
This shouldn't be the Hunger Games like it was with PPE.
Including some Trump allies who are dismissive of his plans.
I saw some of the stuff that Biden's putting out, he's going to create these FEMA camps or whatever. I can tell you that's not necessary in Florida.
And forging enough cooperation with Republicans in Washington to deliver on his ambitious agenda.
It requires the most elusive of all things in a democracy, unity.
But President Biden's call to dial down the temperature of political disagreements may quickly face its limits when it comes to policy consensus.
President Biden sounded a lot of notes of unity in his inaugural address, but unfortunately, when he got back to the White House, he implemented a bunch of far-left policies.
Republicans and Democrats can't even agree on ground rules for running the Senate, especially whether to keep the filibuster.
Then I cannot imagine the Democratic leader would rather hold up the power-sharing agreement than simply reaffirm that his side won't be breaking this standing rule of the Senate.
Leader McConnell's proposal is unacceptable, and it won't be accepted.
Biden economic advisor Brian Deese is scheduled to brief a bipartisan group of senators in a call today to push Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID relief plan. And while President Biden urges Congress to tackle his priorities quickly,
The more time we have to get up and running and meet these crises, the better.
A Senate impeachment trial
Presentation by the parties will commence the week of February the 8th.
May make it harder to both change the tone and delay passage of his agenda.
It's unconstitutional. It sets a bad precedent for the presidency, and it continues to divide the nation.
I don't think it's very unifying to say, oh, let's just forget it and move on.
Well, joining me now is President Biden's Chief of Staff, Ron Klain. Mr. Klain.
And I had Ron Klain last week. I have no Ron Klain clips this week. Later I'll have my Meet the Press clip later. Will be Chuck Todd talking to Dick Durbin about the possibility of getting rid of the filibuster. And you saw a lot of coverage of what Biden's choices for getting his agenda passed. First is trying to unify, trying to get like 10 Republicans in the Senate to join the 50, keep all 50 Democrats together, because of course there are some centrist Democrats like Joe Manchin of West Virginia who isn't necessarily going along with the full COVID relief bill, thinks that maybe the $1,400 checks have to be targeted or whatever, and so he's got to keep all the Democrats together and then get 10 Republicans. Or if you can't keep all the Democrats together, get more than 10 Republicans. That's option one. Option two is this thing called reconciliation, which is like a parliamentary process that lets certain types of things be passed without being subject to the filibuster, so they can get it passed with 50 votes plus the vice president's vote. Kamala Harris breaks ties, so if they can. That's the second thing. And then the third possibility you saw briefly discussed in there was getting rid of the filibuster, so that, there's nothing in the Constitution, if you have your U.S. Constitution, nothing in there about the filibuster. That's just a Senate rule. The majority can get rid of it if they want to, or 50 votes plus the vice president can get rid of it. And I actually have my own idea for filibuster reform, which I will talk about when I get to that Dick Durbin clip talking to Chuck Todd about the filibuster. That's clip 9. But now I want to show you this Fox News Sunday news summary, which focuses almost entirely on what was in the last 30 seconds of that NBC News Meet the Press news summary, impeachment, and the impeachment trial, and how they briefly mentioned how it might mess up Biden's confirmation the confirmation hearings for Biden's cabinet nominees. But other than that, you would almost think Trump was still president and he was in the middle of impeachment. It's kind of like a bizarro world news summary from Fox News that I will talk about a little more after we watch it together over here.
And hello again from Fox News in Washington. Opening arguments in the Senate impeachment trial of Donald Trump will begin in 2 weeks. The delay, part of a deal struck by Senate leaders, allowing time for Mr. Trump's legal team to prepare a defense. Time also for the Senate to confirm some of President Biden's cabinet nominees, and time to take up his COVID relief package. In a moment, we'll talk about the trial, the Biden agenda, and the split inside the GOP with Republican Senators Mitt Romney and Marco Rubio. But first, Mike Emanuel reports on what we know about the timing and structure of the second Trump trial in the Senate.
House lawmakers will deliver an article of impeachment to the Senate accusing former President Trump of incitement of insurrection Monday evening. But the substance of the trial won't get started until 2 weeks later, February 9th, allowing time for the Senate to confirm more Biden cabinet members.
The more time we have to get up and running and meet these crises, the better.
Still, the new majority leader is making the case a trial is necessary.
Healing and unity will only come if there is truth and accountability, and that is what this trial will provide.
Conviction in the Senate would appear unlikely, as 17 Republicans are needed to join with Democrats. And many in the GOP now argue there is no reason for a trial after President Trump has left office.
Well, I think it's obvious that the post-presidential impeachments never occurred in the history of the country for a reason, that it's unconstitutional.
There's also a need for Schumer and Republican leader Mitch McConnell to complete a power-sharing agreement, since the Senate is split 50-50. While some on the left argue the legislative filibuster should be scrapped, McConnell is fighting to save it.
So we'll continue to request that our Democrat colleagues reaffirm this standing rule of the Senate, which they have been happy to use on many occasions.
Next up for cabinet confirmations, Janet Yellen for Treasury Secretary and Antony Blinken for Secretary of State. But soon an impeachment trial will be taking time away from more confirmations. Chris?
Mike Emanuel reporting from Capitol Hill. Mike, thank you. And joining us now, Senator Mitt Romney of Utah.
And Mitt Romney was on a couple different shows. I don't have clips of Mitt Romney, but he was actually fairly reasonable, except about passing the $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill. He thought, he's one of the ones who might want to cut some of it out or whatever, which, given the size of the crisis, I think it's, if anything, it's too small and there's not enough in there, but that's just my opinion. But I will have a Fox News Sunday clip coming up where ChrisWallace actually talks about the vaccine distribution problems with the new director of the CDC, Rochelle Walensky. That's clip number 10. So at least they bring up the fact that, you saw like no mention of coronavirus, almost no mention of Biden in that whole news introduction. It was almost all about impeachment. And at least during that last part, they did mention that Trump was out of office as like an argument as to why he shouldn't be convicted in the Senate. And they were especially weaselly in the way they reported on the filibuster there, because they made it seem like McConnell just wants to reaffirm the rules of the Senate, when actually Chuck Schumer offered him the same 50-50 power sharing agreement that they had back in 2001, the last time there was a 50-50 Senate. And McConnell said no, he wanted that plus a rule saying that the majority can't touch the filibuster. That would be a new rule that had not existed in the past. A commitment not to change the filibuster in the future, which, as you'll see when I show the Dick Durbin clip, is totally unreasonable, because the threat of getting rid of the filibuster is one of the few things the Democrats can use to lower the amount of times the Republicans use the filibuster. But anyway, that was the second news and the worst of the news summaries. The next one is CNN State of the Union, as I said, with Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. And like a lot of the programs had audio difficulties. Well, they've been having them all through the pandemic. I guess it's difficult when people are working from home. I don't know where Dana Bash is, but this is her big debut as one of the named co-hosts of CNN State of the Union. And there's a little bit of an inauspicious audio problem. Then she follows Jake Tapper's rule that you start off every program saying, what is our State of the Union this week? And it's turning the page, talks about facing crises and Biden's 100 doses or 100 million vaccinations in 100 days of his administration promise. And anyway, like I said, these news summaries are going from longer to shorter, so they should be getting more and more bearable, at least from that point of view. And I'll talk about this. And you can see Dana Bash's inauspicious beginning of the new show with her name on it over here.
Where the State of our Union is turning the page. President Biden is about to begin his first full week in office, facing challenges America has not seen since FDR or even Lincoln. A crisis compounded by a now ex-president who largely ignored the pandemic as 400,000 Americans died, while leaving American democracy on life support as well. President Biden's response so far, starkly different, in words, by example, and with a pile of executive actions and proposed legislation. But the new president is having to face reality quickly, with criticism that his stated goal of administering 100 million vaccines in his first 100 days isn't big and bold enough to get the pandemic under control. And with a divided Senate that can't even seem to agree on how to begin work and will soon be tied up with the second impeachment trial for President Trump, this hour we're going to bring you interviews with key senators on both sides of the aisle, Mitt Romney and Bernie Sanders, plus impeachment manager Madeleine Dean. But I want to begin with the new administration and the most pressing crisis facing the country. Joining me now exclusively is the man President Biden tapped.
And I don't have Javier Becerra, the new Health and Human Services Secretary, if he's confirmed. He's currently the Attorney General of California. He actually did the interview from Sacramento, where I am. But that wasn't one of the clips that met my topics. But anyway, you saw Dana Bash's debut there with a little bit of soundless speaking. I don't know if that they fixed it in the rebroadcast 3 hours later. Also, I noticed that I had a couple super chat a super chat contribution from Lulu Girl asking about, is this the week for sardines for Dash? I am going to work that out. I'm going to maybe pre-record that at some point in the next few weeks, but today is not the day. I'm sorry. And then I saw I have a new channel member. You know, if you click that join button below the video, like I guess Mondo Lestraka, if I'm really bad at pronouncing names, so I hope I got that right. Thank you for becoming a new member. Since I get very little advertising revenue from YouTube for the last several years, as my longtime viewers know, I appreciate the financial support from the Super Chat contributors, the channel members, and of course there's links down in the video description to become a monthly patron on Patreon or to give a direct contribution via PayPal at the $5 level. From PayPal and Patreon, you get this weatherproof vinyl #LiberalViewer sticker, and at the $10 level, you get the sticker plus an ACLU Constitution, United States Constitution, and I might even be referring to the Constitution when a little bit later, but I often do if you watch the show. But I want to finish the news summaries. That was CNN State of the Union, the third one. The fourth one here is ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, where again they're kind of into the writing. What's that famous saying that the empires end slowly and then all at once or something? And that's kind of how the Trump administration ended, I guess, in this short news summary, covering more stuff really than you heard in the much longer Fox News Sunday news summary, which I'll talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
Good morning and welcome to This Week. The end came slowly, then suddenly. After a transition that redefined tumultuous, Inauguration Day opened with these final words from President Trump. Have a good life. See you soon. Followed by this first declaration from President Biden. Democracy has prevailed. The shift in style and substance was stark. Now comes the challenge of confronting the cascading crises outlined by President Biden in his inaugural address and confronting the behavior of President Trump that sparked an insurrection. Our new poll with Ipsos shows a solid majority of Americans approve of Biden's pandemic plans and believe he can make progress on unifying the country. But the divisions in Congress already demonstrating how tough it will be for President Biden to advance his agenda. Congressional correspondent Rachel Scott starts us off. Good morning, Rachel.
George, good morning. And it is the...
And so, yeah, that was the brief ABC This Week with George Stephanopoulos news summary, and then I will juxtapose those last four news summaries with the shortest from CBS News' Face the Nation, which did kind of give you more information about COVID than the other ones, talking about the COVID variants in the end of, well, this is just 40 seconds long before they go to a guest, but to Anthony Fauci, and I'll have some of that Anthony Fauci interview later as my final clip 11, also talking about problems with vaccine distribution. But here's Margaret Brennan starting off Face the Nation this morning over here.
Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation. The country has a new administration, but we're still facing a crisis of monumental proportions. Nearly 25 million Americans have been diagnosed with coronavirus so far. Right now, the rate of new infections is starting to slow, but the death toll is not. Last week, an American died of COVID-19 every 30 seconds. And experts are now warning that in addition to being more contagious, the new variants could also be more lethal. We begin with the president's chief medical advisor, Dr. Anthony Fauci. Good morning to you, doctor.
And like I said, I have an Anthony Fauci clip coming at the end, but you saw the mutant strains. I saw in the comment section before I started the show, I had the announcement of the show up for a few hours, and I saw people talking about the mutations, and asking why I hadn't talked about them, but I just talked about those like in the last couple of weeks, that there's the UK mutation that apparently is more contagious, may also be 30% more lethal, and Anthony Fauci talks about that in part of the interview I didn't take, although you can see the entire 10-minute Anthony Fauci interview and pretty much all of Face the Nation at their YouTube channel at a link I put down in the video description, where they split up the whole show into segments, including this long interview of Deborah Birx, where she tries to like rehabilitate herself. I didn't take any clips of that. I didn't find it all that credible, but it didn't really fit what I wanted to talk about. But anyway, I went through like 3 topics there, and I was saying that Anthony Fauci was talking about the more contagious UK variant possibly being more lethal, but it's like 30% more lethal, meaning instead of killing 1 person in 1,000, it kills 1.3 people in 1,000. That is a 30% increase, but it's still not that much more. I mean, that 30% increase is from a very small amount to begin with. So, and that was just his example or whatever. So, and then the South African mutation seems like it might be less easily treated by the monoclonal antibodies, and might even be the vaccines may be less effective on the South African mutation because it has different outer proteins than the traditional coronavirus, and it's those outer proteins I was talking about last week. They use to that's what the messenger RNA vaccines, what they do is they tell your cells how to produce those outer proteins of COVID-19, and then your cells produce them, and then your immune system creates antibodies to those proteins. So if those proteins change, the vaccine becomes less effective. So I wanted, just because I saw people talking about that before the show started, I wanted to add all that in, which isn't in any of the news summaries. But it was in some of the things that Anthony Fauci talked about in a clip I didn't take. But now I want to get to the clip of the week. And one of the things I find most amazing about this, I thought that George Stephanopoulos did a great job of getting away from one of the big biases of the mainstream media. Over on Fox News, they call it the liberal media, and I don't think that the corporate media really has a liberal bias. Fox News, if you read The Loudest Voice in the Room by Gabriel Sherman, you'll find out it's actually not a journalistic organization. It was created to be like a propaganda arm of the Republican Party. Well, the rest of the corporate news outlets, they do have biases. I just don't think it's a liberal bias because they're huge corporations. Huge corporations aren't liberal. They're biased towards big corporations, so corporatism. They're biased towards sensationalism because that, gets more views. They're biased towards simplicity because, it goes, more people can understand it. That's more viewers. And they have this bias towards both sidism. That sometimes, is the earth flat? Should you give like equal weight to both sides of that debate, or there are just certain debates where if you go to both sides, you're creating a sense of equality that shouldn't exist. And that's a big bias of a lot of the corporate media. And George Stephanopoulos fights against it here. He's accused of not giving both sides to the idea, was the election stolen? Well, some people say yes, some people say no. And I think he does a great job of dismantling Rand Paul's argument. But the craziest thing about this is afterwards I saw Rand Paul tweeted the entire clip, and actually a longer version than I'm going to show you, because it actually shows another audio problem where they tried to get Amy Klobuchar in first and couldn't do it and then went to Rand Paul. I cut out that part. But then here's this tweet from Rand Paul. Partisan Democrats in the media think they can get away with just calling Republicans liars because they don't agree with us. Watch me stand up to one here. And then he tweets out the whole clip I'm about to show you. And then below that he says, I voted to certify the electors and seat the new president. It's not about that anymore. They won't even admit there's election fraud and want to pretend nothing happened. But that isn't even really what George Stephanopoulos was asking him. He was asking him, can you agree that the election wasn't stolen? That was like a big lie. And anyway, I'm going to show you the entire 6.5 minutes. You can tell me what you think while we're watching it. If Rand Paul is right in his crazy tweeting that he got the best of this, or am I right that George Stephanopoulos did a great job? Definitely the cross-examination of the week. As a former criminal defense attorney, I pride myself on my ability to cross-examine, and I think I have the ability to judge a good cross-examination. You can tell me what you think after we watch it together over here.
I think we have some audio problems right there. Senator Paul, let me begin with a threshold question for you. This election was not stolen. Do you accept that fact?
Well, what I would say is that the debate over whether or not there was fraud should occur. We never had any presentation in court where we actually looked at the evidence. Most of the cases were thrown out for lack of standing, which is a procedural way of not actually hearing the question. There were several states in which the law was changed by the Secretary of State and not the state legislature. To me, those are clearly unconstitutional, and I think there's still a chance that those actually do finally work their way up to the Supreme Court. Courts traditionally and historically don't like to hear election questions. But yes, were there people who voted twice? Were there dead people who voted? Were there illegal aliens who voted? Yes, and we should get to the bottom of it. I'll give you an example. In my state, when we had a Democrat Secretary of State, she refused, even under federal order, to purge the rolls of illegal voters. We got a Republican Secretary of State, and he purged the rolls.
Senator Paul,
I have to make a difference, and those things
I have to stop you there. No election is perfect, but there were 86 challenges filed by President Trump and his allies in court. All were dismissed. Every state certified the results after investigations, counts, and recounts. The Department of Justice, led by William Barr, said there's no widespread evidence of fraud. Can't you just say the words, this election was not stolen?
What I would suggest is that if we want greater confidence in our elections, and 75% of Republicans agree with me, is that we do need to look at election integrity, and we do need to see if we can restore confidence in the elections.
Well, 75% of Republicans agree with you because they were fed a big lie by President Trump and his supporters who say the election was stolen. Why can't you say,
well, I think where you make, a mistake, hey, George, where you make a mistake is that people coming from the liberal side like you immediately say everything's a lie instead of saying there are two sides to everything. Historically, what would happen is if I said that I thought there was fraud, you would interview someone else who said there wasn't. But now you insert yourself in the middle and say the absolute fact is that everything I'm saying is a lie.
Well, because, Senator, I said what the president said was a lie because he said, hold on a second. He said the election was stolen. This election was not stolen. The results were certified in every single state after counts and recounts.
You're saying that absolutely you're saying there was no fraud and it's all been investigated. That's just not true.
It's not what I said, sir. I said the Department of Justice found no evidence. Let me finish my point.
You said something that
was not true.
You say we're all liars. You're just simply saying we're all liars. And
I said it was a lie that the election was stolen.
Premise that you're right and we're wrong. Well, let's talk about the specifics of it. In Wisconsin, tens of thousands of absentee votes had only the name on them and no address. Historically, those were thrown out. This time they weren't. They made special accommodations because they said, oh, it's a pandemic, and people forgot what their address was. So they changed the law after the fact. That is wrong. That's unconstitutional. And I plan on spending the next 2 years going around state to state and fixing these problems. And I won't be cowed by liberals in the media who say, there's no evidence here and you're a liar if you talk about election fraud. No, let's have an open debate. It's a free country.
There's no widespread evidence of election fraud that overturned the results. That was stated as well by the Department of Justice, led by President Trump's Attorney General. In Wisconsin, there were counts and recounts.
Actually, it was never studied. Even that's not true. Even that's not true.
William Barr said that directly.
Barr said that, but there was. Yes, he said that. Yes, that was a pronouncement. There has been no examination, thorough examination of all the states to see what problems we had and see if they could fix them. Now, let me say, to be clear, I voted to certify the state electors because I think it would be wrong for Congress to overturn that. But at the same time, I'm not willing just to sit here and say, oh, everybody on the Republican side is a liar and there is no fraud. No, there were lots of problems, and there were secretaries of state who illegally changed the law, and that needs to be fixed. And I'm going to work hard to fix it, and I won't be cowed by people saying, oh, you're a liar. That's the problem with the media today, is they say all Republicans are liars and everything we say is a lie. There are two sides to every story. Interview somebody on the other side, but don't insert yourself into the story to say we're all liars because we think there's some fraud in the election.
There are not two sides to the story. This has been looked at in every single state. The election results were certified in every single state.
There are two sides to every story. George, you're forgetting who you are. You're forgetting who you are as a journalist. If you think there's only one side, you're inserting yourself into the story to say, I'm a liar because I want to look at election fraud and I want to look at secretaries of state who illegally changed the voter laws without the permission of their state legislatures. That is incontrovertible. It happened. And you can't just sweep that under the rug and say, oh, nothing to see here, and everybody's a liar and you're a fool if you bring this up. You're inserting yourself into the story. A journalist would hear both sides, and there are two sides to this story.
I'm standing by facts. There are not two sides to facts. I did not say that this was a perfect election. I said the results were certified. I said it was not stolen. It is a lie to say
people are liars. You're saying people are liars if they want to investigate what happened in the election. Should we investigate the fact that tens of thousands of absentee ballots did not have addresses on them and normally were disqualified, but this time they were counted? Should we examine that? I don't know whether it affected the election or not, but I have an open mind. And if we actually examine this and we find out it didn't, that's fine, but it still should be fixed.
There can be more investigations. The investigations that have taken place have shown there is not enough fraud to change the results of this election. That has been certified by every state. It was stated by the Justice Department and the Attorney General.
And I accepted the state certifications, but it doesn't mean that I think that there wasn't fraud and that there weren't problems that have to be investigated, and it doesn't mean that the law wasn't broken. I believe in Pennsylvania they broke the law, and I believe if that ever would get a real hearing in the Supreme Court, it was denied for standing. It wasn't actually taken up. If it were taken up, I do believe that the Supreme Court would overrule and say that they did break the law illegally.
I asked you a very simple question. Was the election stolen or not?
I think there was a great deal of evidence of fraud and changing of the election laws illegally, and I think a thorough investigation is warranted.
Senator Paul, thanks for your time this morning.
Thanks for your time, Senator Paul. That was like on my main topic of will Biden unify. I didn't make it can Biden unify because it's not totally up to Biden. It also is up to the people he's trying to unify with, and some of the people he's apparently wants to try to unify with are people like Rand Paul, who, if after the insurrection at the Capitol that was based on this big lie that the election was stolen, when asked the direct question, was the election stolen, give you like that 6 minutes of bullshit rather than saying, no, it was a big lie, the election wasn't stolen, I'm sorry, we're sorry. That's the thing for one of the things that Nelson Mandela taught us in South Africa, that before you can unify, you need truth and reconciliation. Although reconciliation means something a little different in the next clip I'm going to show you. Anyway, before I get to the next clip, I just want to, I pretty much pre-criticized that clip before I showed it. I talked a lot about how both-siderism is a journalistic bias, which is bad because, as George Stephanopoulos said, you know, there aren't two sides to facts. I mean, there may be two sides in a policy debate, but that doesn't mean that what... Anyway, I said a lot about that before I showed the clip, and I just want to reiterate my question that I asked is, like, am I crazy? Did George Stephanopoulos show Rand Paul to be a unrepentant insurrectionist in spirit, if not in actual criminal prosecutability, by still sticking to the big lie of the election being stolen? Or is Rand Paul right in his crazy tweets that I showed before, that he showed the media how they're like painting us as liars? I'm pretty sure that I'm right. You can let me know who you think's right after watching that entire 6.5 minutes. You saw the whole thing. Let me know what you think. And on the other side, from the crazy election was stolen, Biden's not a legitimate president people, that Biden, if he's able to unify, may have to, that's the one side he has to deal with. The other side, of course, are people more like me, the progressive Democrats, the people who are, who thought Obama was too centrist because he was a centrist, and are hoping... I didn't support Biden. I didn't support Kamala Harris. I started off supporting Elizabeth Warren, kind of, and ended up actually voting for Bernie Sanders in the California primary. If you've been watching my live streams all the way back to the California primary last March. But I would like to see Biden move more towards the Bernie Sanders views, and that's what Bernie Sanders wants. Talking to Dana Bash, you'll see Dana Bash does an introduction about how Biden is being pushed towards the more progressive side, especially now that Democrats control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And then you'll see Bernie talk about using reconciliation, the process I was talking about to get things passed with 50 votes. You'll see Dana Bash makes one mistake here, saying that you need 51 votes in the Senate, when actually you just need 50 votes plus the tiebreaker from the Vice President, Kamala Harris, unless you count that as a vote. I guess maybe that counts as a vote, so it's sort of a quasi-error in this long, more substantive Bernie Sanders clip. Sort of the antidote to that crazy Rand Paul clip we just watched, which I will talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
Whose Senate is it anyway? With the Senate in limbo, fighting over power, and an impeachment trial looming, Joe Biden's agenda during a public health emergency is already facing an uphill battle. And it's not just Republicans he has to worry about. The progressive end of his party, the question is, are they pleased with his first week in office? Well, joining me now is Independent Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. Thank you so much for joining me this morning, Senator. And you've said that Joe Biden is off to a good start. Some of your progressive colleagues want him to do more. For example, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wants him to forgive student loan debt. Congresswoman Cori Bush wants bigger direct payments to Americans. Congressman Jamal Bowman called for a more progressive cabinet. Are they right?
Look, we're going to push Joe as the president as far as we can. But given the fact he's been in office for less than a week, I think he is off to a good start. What we have got to do is recognize that right now we're living in an unprecedented moment in American history. You got the pandemic, you got an economic collapse, we got climate change, we got a crumbling infrastructure. And what we have millions of people working for starvation wages. And what we have got to do is roll up our sleeves and fight for the agenda that working people throughout this country want. They want to raise that minimum wage to $15 an hour. They want that direct payment of $1,400 on top of the $600. We've got to do that. They understand that during the midst of the healthcare crisis, we cannot have millions of people being thrown out of their houses or lack healthcare. So we have an enormous amount of work. Then you throw in impeachment, you throw in the need to get Biden's nominees confirmed. It's a lot of work that has to be done, and we're going to roll up our sleeves and do it.
So you've suggested that Democrats might need to use a process called reconciliation, which requires only 51 votes instead of the 60 to pass the coronavirus relief plan. You just heard Mitt Romney say that Republicans like him have shown that they are ready to compromise. So should Democrats move to pass coronavirus relief with 51 votes if they can't get Republican support, say, before the impeachment trial?
Well, I don't know what the word compromise means. I know that working families are living today in more economic desperation than since the Great Depression. And if Republicans are willing to work with us to address that crisis, welcome, let's do it. But what we cannot do is wait weeks and weeks and months to go forward. We have got to act now. That is what the American people want. Now, as you know, reconciliation, which is a Senate rule, was used by the Republicans under Trump to pass massive tax breaks for the rich and large corporations. It was used as an attempt to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And what we are saying is, you use it for that, that's fine. We're going to use reconciliation, that is 50 votes in the Senate plus the vice president, to pass legislation desperately needed by working families in this country right now. You did it, we're going to do it, but we're going to do it to protect ordinary people, not just the rich and the powerful.
And what's your timeline on that?
As soon as we possibly can. Look, Donna, you know, I know these are crazy times. We got a new president in. We're dealing with the horrors of this pandemic, which also have got to be addressed immediately. We have not done a good job in producing the amount of vaccine that we need and certainly getting it into the arms of people.
Do you want it done before the impeachment trial starts?
We got to do everything. I mean, this is not, you don't have the time to sit around, weeks on impeachment and not get vaccines into the arms of people. You don't have time to worry about vaccines and not deal with the fact that children in America are going hungry. We got to break through this old approach that the Senate takes years and years to do anything. We got a crisis right now. We can chew bubble gum and walk at the same time. The American people are hurting, and they want us to act. That's what our candidates ran for in this election. That's what the guys in Georgia won on. And we have got to reaffirm the faith of the American people in government that we can respond to their pain.
You mentioned that Republicans have used the so-called reconciliation process before, like in 2017, to try to kill Obamacare. You accused them of abusing the process back then. You said, quote, the function of reconciliation is to adjust federal spending and revenue, not to enact major changes in policy.
And I just wanted to keep that playing through that cross-examination by Dana Bash because, to her credit, she did cross-examine Bernie Sanders on his previous statement, but I'm not going to show his answer because he basically reiterated what you saw at the end of that last clip there where he said, well, they did it to benefit the rich and big corporations. I'm doing it to help working families who are desperate in the pandemic to get something before they lose their homes and go hungry. And if they want to criticize me for using the rules they use for the rich and the powerful to help those who are most in need, then let them criticize. Well, whatever. I'm trying to do sort of a Bernie Sanders impression there. I didn't do the arm thing, but that's just in honor of the substantive Bernie clip. Whatever. I just got into it there for a minute, and I did. Like I said, I did vote for Bernie Sanders. Actually, in 2016 and 2020 in the California primary, that was 2 primaries in a row that I voted for Bernie Sanders. But then I voted for Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden in the general election, and the Joe Biden vote worked out better. That's all I can say. But you also saw Bernie Sanders talking about reconciliation. I was saying that step 2. Step 1 is compromising with the Republicans, maybe a smaller bill, but bringing Republicans along and all the Democrats, because there are even some Democrats like Joe Manchin who want a less expensive COVID relief bill. And then comes, if you can't compromise with Republicans, you stick it into this reconciliation thing that Bernie Sanders was saying he's happy to use to help people after Republicans use it to pass tax cuts for the rich and big corporations. And then the final step is what is in this next clip, the final clip in the political section before I get to the last two clips on COVID-19 and vaccine distribution problems. This clip is Chuck Todd talking to Dick Durbin about getting rid of the filibuster. And how long are they going to wait to get rid of the filibuster? Should they give them 2 months or 6 months? Now, I have my own idea. Instead of getting rid of the filibuster, it's Filibuster Reform, where I've been talking about this for months, about making a video called, I even have the title now, it's like Filibuster Reform requiring 60% of the population instead of the states. And how this would work is instead of getting 60% of the senator, every state of the 50 states, they all get 2 senators. California, which has 35 million people, gets the same number of senators as Wyoming, which has 500,000 people. That's just the way. You can't change that without amending the Constitution. Remember, I said I was going to refer to the Constitution? You can't change that. But the filibuster, there's nothing about the filibuster in the Constitution requiring 60 votes to pass most legislation. So my idea is, instead of giving every senator 1 vote towards the filibuster, you give every senator the number of votes that their state has representatives in the House of Representatives. So each California senator would get 53 votes towards the filibuster, and Wyoming, each senator would only get 1 vote. That's because that's the number of members they have in the House of Representatives. So since there are 435 members in the House of Representatives, that means the total number of filibuster votes would be 870. 60% of that is 522 votes. To get 522 votes, you would need to get the top 15 most populous states, going all the way down to states that get 9 members in the House of Representatives. But in order to do that, you need California, but you need Florida, you need Texas, you need Ohio, you need North Carolina, you need both senators. Some states have a Republican and a Democrat, and Florida, Texas, Ohio, those are mostly Republican states. So if you don't have all the big states together, some of the little states matter too. And anyway, this would just have to be a change in Senate rules. I've been thinking about making a video about this. The way it is right now, 30 states, if you get 2 senators from 30 states, that's how you get 60 votes in the Senate. In the worst case scenario, those 30 states could represent only 25% of the U.S. population. I've already done some research on this. So 25% of the U.S. population could be a 60-vote majority in the Senate under the current filibuster. And that's ridiculous. I'd much rather have the 15 largest states representing 60% of the U.S. population control the filibuster. But anyway, that is this strange idea I have for filibuster reform rather than getting rid of the filibuster, which I wanted to interject and sort of preview. Does anyone want me to make a video about this? It's this idea I have. I don't know if it's worth putting time into. Is that idea going to catch on with actual politicians? I'm not even sure who it would benefit. That's one of the great things about it. But promoting one of the other great things about it is promoting that idea puts a real focus on how anti-democratic the Senate is, which is something that people should notice. And the thing is, the filibuster is kind of a relic of Jim Crow, at least that's the way it's been used, and segregationists. And that shows up in this question that Chuck Todd asked Dick Durbin about getting rid of the filibuster, which I have so over-introduced, but I will talk about with you a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
There's a lot of groups. I want to get to the filibuster now. There's a lot of progressive groups that have no patience on this filibuster debate, and I know you guys are going to get inundated with some some ads that are already on social media. Here's one we're putting up. The time has come. Here, it looks like a movie trailer, and they quote Barack Obama saying Jim Crow relic, AOC calling it a cherished tool of segregationists, and former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid saying it's outlived its usefulness. Do you have a point in time? Where are you on this filibuster question? And is there a point where you're going to say, you know what, I've tried long enough?
Well, I think it gets down to the bottom line here. The American people want us to take action. Action on this pandemic, action on this economy, and on a host of other issues. And if this filibuster has now become so common in the Senate that we can't act, that we just sit there helpless, shame on us. Of course we should consider a change in the rule under those circumstances. But let's see. Let's see if we can initiate a real bipartisan dialogue and get something done. That's the bottom line.
Harry Reid, in fact, suggests giving it a couple of months. Would you put a... I've almost wondered, when Senator Schumer and Senator McConnell negotiating, are you willing to say, okay, we won't do it for 6 months. Let's see how you behave?
Well, let me answer your question by citing another thing. We're trying to pass an organizing resolution. You know what that's all about, so that the committees can get down to business. And what Chuck Schumer put on the table was word for word the bipartisan agreement the last time we had a 50-50 Senate. And Senator McConnell came back and said, no, I want absolute protection. The filibuster will not be touched. Well, that's a non-starter, because if we gave him that, then the filibuster would be on everything every day. So here's the bottom line. If we are going to work in a bipartisan fashion, let's pass the organizing resolution without the extra McConnell language. Let's get down to business, roll up our sleeves, and pass this rescue package that deals with getting these vaccines out across America as quickly as possible, giving help to people who are unemployed, and giving businesses a helping hand. We want to get the economy back on its feet. We want to get kids back in school. Let's do that as a priority on a bipartisan basis.
I want to end with a question that I will be asking Senator Rounds.
So there you see Dick Durbin talking about the filibuster. I saw some people in the comment section saying, get rid of the filibuster, you know, full, someone, what was that I saw, like, Isaac, no, get rid of the filibuster, full stop, said it a few minutes ago while we were watching that clip. And the thing about getting rid of the filibuster is there are certain Democrats like Joe Manchin and a couple of others who aren't necessarily willing to get rid of the filibuster. And that's kind of what I like about my idea, that it's sort of a compromise. It keeps the filibuster, but it requires you to get 60% of the population represented by the states rather than 60% of the states, which that's just like, in a lot of cases, big open land. And once you get rid of the filibuster or you change the filibuster so it's more democratic, that gives you more, it makes it easier to expand the Supreme Court, to add additional states, which is one way to make the Senate more democratic, is to add some, you know, like the District of Columbia or Puerto Rico, if Puerto Ricans actually want to become a state. And anyway, so there are other, and once you get rid of the filibuster, there are other fixes that are easier for problems in our democracy. Anyway, I want to get on to the final subject here, which is the vaccine distribution problems. And I saw I got some more Super Chat contributions, a nice one from Darian Meza, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which I saying that my shows have been super since the election. I like getting positive comments. That is always helpful to keeping me going for the 8 to 10 hours I have to spend every Sunday doing this to bring the show to you. And then Chair's Bed brings, I was getting down to Chair's Bed here saying 1 million a day is not ambitious enough. And then Tom Trask asked if Rolex Gate is, yeah, I saw the Rolex Gate was Biden wearing a Rolex, that there were no clips on that. I'm not getting to Rolex Gate, but the 1 million is not ambitious enough. That's something that I've been saying for weeks. The 100 million well, I thought it was doses, but it's actually 100 million vaccinations in the first 100 days. And that includes people getting their second dose. So it's like twice as bad as I thought, doing the math. You're going to see ChrisWallace asking finally the new director of the CDC, Rochelle Walensky, about this. Although he says, like, experts say that's not enough, but you don't really have to be an expert to just do the math. Like, even if you only want to do, like, say, well, let's just round up a little and say you want to vaccinate 300 million people. Well, that's going to take 300 days, which is 10 months at 1 million a day, and even twice as long if each of those people have to get 2 doses. Then you're like 600 days. That's like, that's 20 months. That's well into 2022. You just need math to figure that out. But ChrisWallace, you'll see in asking Rochelle Walensky about it, says it's actually experts who point out to us that 100 million doses in the first 100 days isn't enough. And you'll see this is the new director of the CDC that Biden appointed, taking over for Robert Redfield, and hopefully we'll be able to depoliticize a deeply damaged organization, which came up in other parts of the interview, but this is just the part about vaccine distribution in this clip.
Doctor, I want to start with the president's call this week. Take a look.
We're in a national emergency. We need to act like we're in a national emergency. So we've got to move with everything we've got.
Mr. Biden promises 100 million doses in the first 100 days, and you have said that the administration is sticking with that promise. But, Doctor, there are experts who say at that pace, 100 million doses in 100 days, we will not contain the virus here in the United States until 2022, until sometime next year. Don't you have to go faster than that?
Good morning, Chris. Yes, we have to go faster. We are limited by numerous constraints here. The first is the supply, and we're working closely with the manufacturers so that does not become a constraint. We also need to sort of make sure that the supply gets to pharmacies, that we have enough vaccinators, that we have enough places and outreach to do the vaccination. So yes, I think that the supply is probably going to be the most limiting constraint early on, and we're really hoping that after that first 100 days, we'll have much more production, not just for these 2 vaccines, but we are hopeful that we'll have another one from Johnson & Johnson in the weeks ahead, and perhaps even a 4th coming down the pipeline. So we are really hoping that we'll have more vaccine, and that will increase the pace at which we can do the vaccinations.
I want to get to those supply concerns in a moment, but let's talk about...
So there you see ChrisWallace bring, like I said, I don't know why he says experts say that at the rate of 100 million in 100 days, we won't get there till 2021 or till 2022, when you just have to be able to do math, like I was saying before I showed the clip. But Rochelle Walensky has some good response there, that there may be additional vaccines coming, especially the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Anthony Fauci talked about that, and not in the clip. No, it might actually be in the clip here. Well, anyway, within a couple weeks, they may be getting ready to approve it, which means the Johnson & Johnson vaccine might start ramping up in, May, June, July, and that vaccine only requires 1 dose. So every vaccination is a dose. You don't have to cut it in half, like I was saying before the last clip. And anyway, this is the final clip, final news clip. I do have a bonus Dash and Sandy or Dandy clip at the end for the Dash and Sandy fans out there. But this is Anthony Fauci talking about vaccine distribution problems, and how even though some days in the Trump administration they actually hit 1 million vaccinations a day, that's because they were kind of getting the low-hanging fruit, the easy places to vaccinate quickly, and that it's actually going to get harder. So it is a kind of ambitious goal, even though it's not fast enough. And anyway, answering some of the questions that Rochelle Walensky, from the director of the CDC, was talking about in the last clip, in the final news clip tonight over here.
Understood. On the vaccines, you just drove home that point of how important it is to get this out there. I want to play some tape here for you and get you to clarify when U.S. taxpayers can expect to get their vaccine.
At least 100 million COVID vaccine shots into the arms of the American people in the first 100 days. 100 million shots in the first 100 days.
You know the goal that's been set, which I believe is entirely achievable, is to have 100 million people vaccinated in the first 100 days.
Both vaccines?
Primary and boost. Yes.
Primary and boost.
Yeah.
In 100 days.
Yes. Yes.
So, Doctor, in that exchange, you seem to be promising a bit more than the president is. Can you just bottom line it? How many people will be fully vaccinated within 100 days?
Yeah, so let me clarify that, because there was a little bit of a misunderstanding. What we're talking about is 100 million shots in individuals. So shots, as in other words, when you get down to, let's say, a certain part of the 100 days, at the end of 100 days, you're going to have some people who will have gotten both shots and some will still be on their first shots. What the president is saying, 100 million shots in the arms of people within 100 days.
So reportedly, the transition team projections are that that's more like 67 million people by April, by the end of 100 days. Is that an accurate number?
Right. Yeah, that is, well, I haven't done the math myself, but it sounds very much like the accurate number, where you're having people who will have gotten 2 doses and then some that are still on their first dose. When you add them all up and you look at shots, it's 100 million shots in the arms of people within the first 100 days.
Okay, so the Trump administration's Health and Human Services Secretary said on this program in December that just with Pfizer and Moderna's vaccine, they could get to 100 million shots by the end of February. President Biden's goal puts that benchmark out in April. Are you deliberately setting expectations low?
No, that's not the case. If you go back and look at the facts of actually what had been done in the first, 38 days, I believe, that in the former administration, I think maybe 2 out of those days had reached 100 million, and the average along that period of time was about 450,000 per day. This is hard. Now, what we've got to realize, that although more recently there have been a couple of days where you've had 1 million, that has been predominantly in areas that are relatively easy from the standpoint of getting it done, in a nursing home or in a situation in a hospital setting. If you look forward with the challenges that we'll be having, getting it out into the community that is not easily accessible, getting it to people that are not uniform in the sense of being healthcare providers or people in nursing homes, I still think that that challenge is really, first of all, it's going to be a floor, not a ceiling. It's not going to be easy to do that. I think there is this misperception out there, Margaret, because we've hit 1 million a day for a couple of days, that when we get out into the community, it's going to be really easy to do that. That's not the case. It is going to be a challenge. I think it was a reasonable goal that was set. We always want to do better than the goal you've set, but it is really a floor and not a ceiling. The most important thing, the message that gets lost in this back and forth, Margaret, is that we've got to vaccinate as many people as we possibly can, as quickly as we possibly can.
Absolutely.
And that's what President Biden made as the point. I mean, that was the major point that he was making.
Understood. And we just want to help clarify that.
So I don't know, did that help clarify that? I thought there was a lot of good information in that explanation from Anthony Fauci, but not necessarily good news as to how great the Biden administration goal of 100 shots in 100 days, that's only getting 50 million people completely vaccinated. But he did give some optimistic messaging there about the new vaccines coming online and how that might ramp up the ability to vaccinate. I saw what was it, in the live comments along the way, I saw, 7:40 p.m. I saw Christopher L. Perez Cruz say, "I'll give LV $5 if someone can find one thing Fauci has got right." Well, when I was reading that while watching the clip, the first thing that popped into my mind, obviously, was back in the spring when Fauci was saying that COVID-19, there was sort of a dip in coronavirus cases, and he was saying it's going to come back in the fall, and Trump was saying might not come back in the fall. I think Fauci was right. One thing Fauci was right about. So, $5, please. $5, please. No, I don't really expect the $5, but I think I've proven my point. The last thing I promised to the viewers was the bonus Dash and Sandy or Dandy clip, which I have to quickly import here before I finish the program. This is some months I pay for YouTube TV so I can watch the news shows at 1.75 speed. That's you can watch it at double speed, but it starts to warble for some reason when I do that. So, and it's harder to understand. So I do it at 1.75 speed. I think you can hear the ABC This Week with George Stephanopoulos panel discussion at 1.75 speed in the background, while you see a little bit of Dash and Sandy interaction in my bedroom. And I think you'll see some of the wiring I used to capture the clips if you're looking very carefully in the, I think it's 13 seconds, Dash and Sandy interacting this morning over here.
Principles and values of this country, and also prosecute people who created property crimes. And if you draw moral equivalence, we're morally lost. Margaret?
One of the things we're looking forward to in the Biden era is the cessation of the whataboutism that we were so addicted to in the Trump era. Well, if they're doing this, what about this? You know what? Let's not do whatabouts.
So that's the Dash and Sandy clip, and I guess by winning Christopher L. Perez Cruz's challenge, I didn't get him to pay up, but I got a couple other people to pay up on his behalf. So that's a double win just by you people in the comments section should be able to meet those challenges. I mean, one time Anthony Fauci was right. I mean, I'm not saying that he's been right 100% of the time. Science is not right 100% of the time. That's when you get new data, especially with a novel coronavirus. That's what novel means, that it's new and you learn new things, you learn about it over time. So when science gets new information, that's when you change your mind, when you find out something you thought was right is not true anymore. So Anthony Fauci was not right 100% of the time, but right one time, give me a break. Anyway, that is the end of the program for this week. I will be back next Sunday and every Sunday. As you know, some people thought this was going to be my last show. I did say for several months that this might be my last Sunday show, but as I explained in the last couple of weeks, I'm going to keep doing the Sunday live stream for the rest of the semester that I would be competing with my daughter for her Zoom college classes on Mondays. So at least through May. And then I might move my show to Monday or do some other thing now that we don't have to deal with the crises every week from the Trump administration. Things might get a little more laid back, be able to wait an extra day without, the whole world exploding or whatever in that 24 hours, or the news cycle going so fast that the Sunday stories don't even mean anything on Monday anymore, whatever. Anyway, that is the end of the program for this week. I appreciate all of you who joined me for the live show, the recorded show viewers, the Super Chat contributors, all the people who support my show financially with the positive comments, with the thumbs up, the subscriptions, the join button, all of it. And until next week, I guess I will be seeing all of you around the internet.